Welcome everyone. My name is Ira Combs. I'll be conducting the interview for a two-part interview for my Mountain Sports Review TV cable show, and also for the good folks, my new friend Rick Hall with the Letcher County Government Channel. Matt's mother, if I'm not mistaken, was a judge over in Bend.
She's a prosecutor. She's a Commonwealth attorney.
So you can now tell your mother that your sports career has taken you into mountain politics.
I'm all for it. Listen, there's nothing more interesting than mountain politics. I know that.
Okay, Matt's visiting Whitesburg today on Thursday with his KSR radio tour, and was kind enough to sit down and give us some minutes for an interview here for my sports show and for the Letcher County Government Channel as well. Matt, let's start this out this way. I'm assuming, well, who is responsible for the concept and the birth of the KSR website, and when did it really take off?
That's a good question. Well, we're about to have our 8th anniversary. It was myself. You may remember Rob Goodell that used to live here. He and I started it not as something we thought was going to be a big thing, just as kind of a whim. We wanted to do a radio show, and couldn't get anybody to put us on the radio, so we started a podcast. And at the time, we didn't have anywhere to actually host it. So we created the Kentucky Sports Radio blog to host the podcast. So it was called Kentucky Sports Radio, and we didn't have a radio show. But Rob and I did it, and then Rob stopped after about 1.5 years. And it really started taking off about 4 or 5 years ago. Last year, Billy Gillespie, first year at Calipari. It really kind of took off then and made it. And I made it my full-time career right before the Brandon Knight season. Right then, I started doing it for him.
The tour, summer tour that's become so popular. How many years is
this? Is only the 2nd year we've been doing it, and the radio show is only 3 years old. And the first year we were only on in Louisville, so we've only been on statewide for 2 years. We decided last year to visit all the affiliates, and last year there were 10, so we did 10 stops. This year there are 20, so we had doubled. So we're basically on the road for 5 straight weeks, but you know, I love it. I mean, it's great to meet. First of all, it's great to see how many people are listening. You know, to see how many people all over, and then to come to these places, and people are so nice, and they seem really happy to be there. And we've had, you know, this was our 4th stop today. We've had at least 60 people at all of them, and we've had over 100 at a couple of them, so it's been great.
In your travels covering Kentucky, I know years ago that was what got me fascinated. Kentucky football and basketball has fascinated me because the family I grew up in, I was the baby of the family. But once I got into my adult years and saw what a media credential would do for me,
yeah, exactly,
through my brother, that jumped out at me. And I've been to so many places, so I've got to ask you, in your short 8-9 years in covering the Wildcats, what facilities of these large arenas, football, basketball in particular, which ones have you enjoyed the most?
You mean in college?
Yes.
The college side? That's a good question. I mean, I love a great game at Rupp is better than anywhere else. I mean, you think about this past year, the Florida game or the Missouri game, a great game at Rupp. But you know, I really like Florida. I think that's when the crowd's into it. Duke is like that as well. I liked when they went to Madison Square Garden, the sort of history of Madison Square Garden. To just watch a game, though, I think Vanderbilt has a great place to literally, if you're just wanting to watch a game. From football, you know, there's something impressive about seeing 100,000 people in the stadium. So if you go to Tennessee and there's 100,000 people, or I've been to Ohio State, and it's like it's just sort of amazing. But you know, in basketball, it's a lot closer feel. You can feel the fans in a way, and I still think when Rupp's at its best, it's best. I'll tell you another good one, Michigan State. Michigan State has a great facility. And then the loudest arena I probably was in was when Kentucky played IU a couple of years ago when they hit that shot.
Postseason, of course, Kentucky, especially the Calipari years, you've had a lot of opportunities to see a lot of the special sports venues, a lot of the domes.
Yeah.
Talk to us about some of the more special of the larger, more famous domes that you've been able to experience.
I mean, I'm not a huge fan of the domes for basketball. I don't think that it leads to the game being played well. 2 years ago when Brandon Knight's team played in Houston at the, I think it's called Reliance Stadium, you know, there were 70,000 people there, but the basketball was terrible because they couldn't shoot the way the sight lines were, and I thought it kind of wasn't fair to the teams involved.
Bad grounds are so bad.
Yeah, it was just bad, and nobody shot well in any of the games. But, you know, they're special. I like New Orleans. I mean, I did like when Kentucky won the title there, I saw your brother on the court after it was over, and that was a very special. I mean, in my time of doing it, that's been the most special moment, was watching them win a title a couple years ago.
I agree with you on the atmosphere at some of those places, even it being the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, just you don't feel
it. But I thought the Georgia Dome, when we made our run, more or less because of the Atlanta alumni fan base, I thought that had a special setting that day. Kentucky, Indiana, Georgia Dome.
The Kentucky-Indiana game was great because Indiana hadn't been good in a long time, so they had a lot of fans there. Kentucky had a lot of fans, and yeah, that was a really good back and forth. And even in New Orleans, Kentucky-Louisville, because there was so much at stake with the rivals playing at the Final Four.
Let's jump tracks a little bit here. I know you're a big football fan as well. Covered the Cats. With the incoming class, the class that's already on campus, the Ryan Timmons and JV's Blue, and some of those kids that's coming in, based on the few that's coming back, the Dante Rumps and the Mr. Cobbles, you know, those kids are SEC type players. Based on what they've got to work with and some of the new talent coming in, what's the ceiling? What's the ceiling for this team this fall?
I mean, the absolute ceiling, they should build a statue to Mark Stoops if he wins 6 this year. I don't think he's going to win 6. I think he's going to win 4. That's, I think, probably right. I mean, the thing people have to understand, they only have 2 positions on the field where I think they have SEC caliber players. I think they have SEC caliber quarterbacks, and I think they have SEC caliber defensive line. Okay, with Bud Dupree, Zadarius Smith, Cobble, and Rump. Besides that, they're fighting uphill. I mean, you know, their wide receivers are terrible. Their running backs are all right. Offensive line's okay. Linebackers and defensive backs. They're going to put me and you out there at some point, maybe. I mean, so they've got. He just doesn't have much to work with. But what I think you will see is I think they're going to be more competitive. I think the games are going to be fun. I always got the feeling last year the team was one bad play from quitting. I don't think you're going to see that this year. So I don't know how many they're going to win. You know, it's the hardest schedule in college football. Yeah. But I think they'll be better.
The wide receiver that's coming in, I think, is going to be how much of an upgrade, I don't know. But I think Ryan Timmons and JV's Blue and the Badette kid from Wisconsin, because of their laurels and because of their speed and athleticism, and the wide receiver position is one of freshman.
And in Neil Brown, and in Neil Brown's offense, even more so, because they run quick routes. Neil Brown was telling me this a couple of weeks ago. He said, look, wide receiver is always the easiest position to play as a freshman. It's even easier for me because I don't ask him to do much.
Yeah.
So you're right. I think that you'll see a lot of young guys play. You're going to see some walk-ons play at wide receiver because they just don't have that many route.
What's in the future from Matt Jones and KSR Radio?
Well, you know, I want to keep enjoying myself. I mean, you know, the comedian George Burns used to say, I don't mind doing the same thing as long as I'm enjoying doing it. I love doing this. I love the radio show. I love the website. So as long as people keep having us, I plan on keeping doing it. And then on the side, we do some other stuff. You know, I did some tennis work this year. But this is still the core of what we do, and I love it.
Last question. How many more years will John Calipari be at Kentucky?
That's a good question. Well, Brad Calipari, his son, has 2 years left in high school. I'd be surprised if he didn't stay those 2 years. And then I think the question becomes, does he want to do anything else with his life? If Cal thinks, look, I'm fine being a basketball coach at UK, then I think he probably has 6 more years in him. But he might decide, I want to try this or I want to try that. I think he'll definitely be here this year and one more. After that, I think it's up in the air.
I said last question, but I got to share one story with Matt. Just a few days ago, Coach Calipari and Coach Matthew Mitchell and Coach Stoops had a private gathering for some of us in Hazard that I was offered an opportunity to be with, and And you hear all these stories. And Coach Cal has, when he took his time on the podium that day, you hear him reference occasionally, not often, about his roots in Western Pennsylvania and how similar they are to Eastern Kentucky. And he was in the midst of telling one of his, he's a masterful public speaker.
Yes, he is.
And he was in the middle of telling one of his stories, humorous stories. And there was a train that come by, and the tracks are fairly close to this facility that he was having his speech at, and they had left the door open in the back, so when the plane landed, he could come in privately. So the train whistle goes by, and he stops in the middle of his little speech, and he says, "Man, this feels so much like home to me." He said, "I feel so at home."
Yeah.
He said, there was a time in my life that I was on the other side of the tracks.
Yeah.
And you could hear people just kind of, they just kind of felt comfortable themselves when he did that.
I mean, you've seen more coaches here than I have, but there are coaches here who coach here and like it. But Cal embraces like
they never interact.
Exactly, he loves it. I mean, I did the tour with him when he won the title. They went 2 days. They went to Hazard, they went to Ashland, Pikeville, and then Western Kentucky. And every stop, he didn't just meet people. He sort of hugged them and embraced. You know what I mean? And like that, I think people love that about him. That's what makes him so great.
Matt Jones, folks, Kentucky Sports Radio. You can get Matt's work on his website, KentuckySportsRadio.com. Going to have a gig with KYT on TV this year.
Yes. By the time this airs, that'll be announced.
Okay.
You're jumping the gun a little bit, but that's all.
But you can also see Matt when football season rolls around and during basketball season. He has a little deal with WKYT and WIMT. That's where he updates us. Is that daily or like bi-weekly or daily? And so you can catch him there as well. But the tour, just now in its infant stages. This was the 4th day. You got about 15, 16 more days left.
16 more.
And Monday through Friday this week, next week, week after. And you can pick them up on KentuckySportsRadio.com on the podcast. And a great time. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Sir.
I've got to interview John Calipari. I've got to interview Mark Stoops, Matthew Mitchell, and Matt Day in the same week, folks.
Thank you very much.
So I've had a good week.
Appreciate it.
All right.